Hi, welcome to The Musical Drummer, the channel where we help you sound like you and nobody else. This is the third in a series of videos we're doing. In the first one we looked at the idea of perfection in drumming and imperfection, and I tried to get across to you the idea that perfection in drumming it's death. Perfect drumming is boring drumming. That imperfection is the essence of musical drumming, is the essence of music itself. So in the first episode we talked about that and looked at the imperfection, the idea of imperfection, how it works. The second episode we looked at space, the space between the notes, and how that is actually where the music lives, and how to think about that and appreciate the difference. When we talk about imperfection in music, it's really looking at the imperfect distance between the notes. And that's where personality lives. That's where your distinct drumming style comes through, is in those spaces and the imperfection of one space to the next. Sounds exciting, doesn't it? If you haven't seen those videos, I recommend that you do. I'll put the links down below, and you can go see what we're talking about there. They aren't necessarily required to understand this episode, because in this episode we're going to be talking about the tools of music, the tools of expression. What are the tools that we as drummers have available to us to make our drumming more expressive, more personal, more feeling, more musical? So I hope you'll join me for that. It should be a pretty interesting ride, I think. So my name is Mark. I'm really glad you're here. Come on in. All right, let's talk about the tools of music, the tools of expressiveness in music. Now, if I asked you, if I ask you to write down, say, 3 or 4 things that are the elements of music, that are the sort of building blocks of music, and you might very well say, well, there's melody, harmony, and rhythm, right? Time signature, key signature, melodies, intervals. That those are the elements of music, right? A song is made up of different notes spaced a certain way from each other. That's music. And I mean, in one sense, that's absolutely true. But here, I want to help us think about it in a more fundamental way, I think is the best way to put it. And as I said in those first couple of videos, the goal here, the reason that your drumming, maybe, and other people's drumming, certainly that I hear, the reason that drumming is not very expressive and is not that individual. Everybody kind of sounds alike. They're playing the same kind of licks. They're doing it the same way, and they're doing it very perfectly, which is extremely impressive from a technical standpoint. But it's not musical to my ears. And as I say in all these videos, the ideas I'm expressing here they're my ideas from what I think about drumming and music. If you have a different idea, if this isn't what you want, if you think drumming should be perfect, no hard feelings. I could argue that point of view all night long too, against this point of view. So there's no right or wrong here. But if you're interested in making your drumming more expressive, more individual, have more personality, then that's what this is about. That's what we're here for. And part of that is, and the reason why drumming isn't that way, to my ears, mostly these days, it's because we've learned, well, one of the quotes that I mentioned in the first video from Charlie Parker about how he said, you need to master your instrument, master the music, then forget all that shit and just play. And the reason drumming isn't more imperfect and more interesting these days is because we've all learned so much. We've all learned from YouTube, from guys showing you how to play on YouTube. And as a result, we all kind of play the same, and we all are striving for that perfection in our playing. And you need to learn everything you can about drumming and how to do it and techniques, because you need those physical tools available to you when your heart responds to the music and tells your hands and feet what to do. They need to be able to do it. So learning that stuff is important. Where we fall down is we don't do the last part of the Charlie Parker quote, which is forget all that shit and just play. Forgetting it is really, really hard. And that's what these videos are for, is to help us unlearn what we know. I mean, it's still in there, but we want to be able to have it step aside from it and be able to play the music using those tools. But the tools are not the point. The perfection isn't the point. The technique isn't the point. The music is the point. The expression is the point. The life coming out through music. That's the point. And that stuff, that in order to get there, we have to understand what is layered on top of our genuine feelings. And all the stuff we learned is piled on top. So we need to start unlearning things. And in this case, what we're trying to unlearn is that sense that the tools of music are melody, harmony, time signatures, right? That's what we've been taught, and you need to know those things. Absolutely, you need to know those things. But they are not, I would argue, they are not the elements of expressiveness in music. They are the elements of structure. The elements of expressiveness are, well, I'm going to give you an example. This is, bear with me for a minute here. Back in the late 70s, I went to a workshop with a man named Lester Bowie, who was the trumpet player for the Art Ensemble of Chicago. And they're still performing. If you haven't heard of them, they're a jazz collective out of Chicago, as you might guess. And they embody the whole history of jazz, not just the history, but also the future of jazz. And in any given moment, in any given song, they are covering all those bases. You need to go listen to them, watch a video of them playing. They are, in my mind, one of the, they are the example of what I'm talking about in all these videos about expressiveness in music. So anyway, I'm at this workshop with Lester Bowie, and he's explaining to me how he approaches things. And so he had all of us, in the night there was maybe 15, 20 of us, and he had us all do some exercise. He said, okay, I want you to play as loud as you can, which of course, as a drummer, that's like, it's like throwing red meat in front of a tiger. So I had no problem with that. Then he said, now I want you to play as loud as you can for 1 minute. And so everybody did. And he said, now I want you to play as quietly as you can for 1 minute. And everybody did that, which is a little more difficult because you have to get really, really sensitive control to do that. And then he said, all right, now I want you to play the highest note you can play. Play just not one note, but just play it high for 1 minute. And so everybody did, and I kind of had to do some adjustment in the drums to get that to come out. He said, now I want you to play low notes as low as you can for 1 minute. Everybody did that. And then he said, I want you to play as fast as you can for 1 minute. Then I want you to play as slowly as you can for 1 minute. And then he said, I want you to play with as much intensity as you can for 1 minute. And he qualified that. He said, intensity does not mean loud or fast. It means intensity. Play with the most intensity you can for 1 minute, and then play with the least intensity you can for 1 minute. And so we did those things. And now that sounds really simple, but it was surprising to me how challenging it was to maintain, like with intensity, to maintain intensity for a full minute. It was more difficult than I thought it would be. And so it was the same way with all of these things. Playing as fast as you can for 1 minute is, that's tiring, as you can imagine. But even playing as slowly as you can for 1 minute requires a lot of concentration and control. And so they were all more difficult than I would have thought, just doing it for a minute. And then he said, okay, what you just did, he said to us, what you just did is exactly what the Art Ensemble of Chicago did. This was our practice session, was to do these exact same 8 things. Loud, soft, high, low, fast, slow, intense, and not intense. Except, he said, when we were doing our rehearsal, we'd have to do each of those things, not for 1 minute, but for 1 hour. To be 1 hour of playing nonstop, as loud as you can for 1 hour, and then 1 hour nonstop as quietly as you can. And he said it was an 8-hour rehearsal every day, and that's what we practiced. They didn't practice songs. They didn't practice chord structures, harmonies, modes, key signatures, time signatures, none of that. That was not any part of their rehearsal. Rehearsal was just on these 8 elements. And I realized, as he told us this, those 8 elements, those are the tools of expression in music, right? Harmony, melody, those are sort of, when you play a note, that depends on how high, how low the note is. That's harmony and melody, right? Where those notes are on that sliding scale between high and low. Fast and slow, time signatures are simply a sort of a byproduct of fast and slow. And the same with all of these. So those, to me, it's like, and this is what the Art Ensemble did. They sort of just took jazz, the way it existed, and kind of threw it out the window and said, let's forget about all that stuff and let's just bore down onto the absolute essentials of expressiveness in music. And then let's build out from there and create this music we're going to create. And some of their music includes jazz standards or a completely free jazz and every stop in between. So those, I think, are the elements of expressiveness in music. Here I want to, most of them, high, low, fast, slow, those don't need any explanation for you or any real exploration. They are the expressive elements, but I want to look at those in a different way. And first, I want to go back to this idea of intensity, because when he suggested that, it was a concept I had never really thought about in terms of playing music. It was, and he didn't really explain it very much. He told us what it wasn't. Because when he said play with intensity, I thought, I'm a drummer, my first thought is play loud and fast. That's intense. But that wasn't what he was talking about at all. He was talking about, it's really intent and focus, projection, just really trying to get the music out there. I mean, if you're speaking to somebody, right? I can speak to you with a lot of intensity, but not loud or fast, right? I mean, I can do it loud and fast too. But if I want to say something like, I'm really angry at you. I'm not speaking loudly or quickly, but I hope you can feel the intensity. I don't ever talk like that to anybody, but for this purpose, I'll act like I do. But you can see that was intense, but it wasn't loud or fast. And so intensity, what made that intense was I wanted you to really, really hear every single thing I was saying and understand it and not be able to pay any attention to anything except what I'm saying to you. That's intensity. And to me, that's really being able to play with that as a drummer, playing with other people, being able to turn that on and off and use that as a tool, it's tremendously powerful. And while we're doing that, well, before we get there, let me just say what all of these things have in common. Remember, he said play high, then low, fast, then slow, intense, less intense, right? loud, soft. Those are opposites, right? They are extremes. And what all of these things have in common is that they are the elements of dynamics. Now, for most people who say dynamics, and most drummers certainly, if I say, you know, I want you to play with more dynamics in your playing, you're going to think that just means more difference between loud and soft, right? And that is absolutely one aspect of dynamics. But I think if we only think of dynamics in those terms, we're kind of missing the boat, because there are all these other kinds of dynamics. And maybe a better way to think about it is, instead of the word dynamics, which for everybody just connotes volume changes, think about it as contrast. And contrast is what, if you look at a photograph, what makes a photograph compelling is the contrast that's in it. And that might be light and dark. It might be the shapes, contrasting textures. That's what we want to think about playing the drums, playing music, is all these contrasts. And you're sitting behind a drum set with 100 different sounds available to you. You know, you can play the rim, the body of the drum, the head, different parts of the head. You can just turn the snare strainer on and off and get sound from that. You can play the edge of the cymbals, the bell of the cymbals, anywhere on the cymbal. Hi-hats can make about 15 sounds all by themselves. You got a whole orchestra of sounds available to you in a drum set. And so that means you also have this vast potential for contrast in your playing. Here's the thing, most of the time when people are talking about drummers, and I said this in earlier videos, right, when I was in high school, the band director used to refer, he would say, okay, this is for you musicians and for the percussionists too, right? Like the drummers aren't musicians. And you've probably gotten this in one way or another from somebody somewhere, and certainly that's a common kind of sensibility. And the reason that people come to that conclusion is we don't play specific pitches, we don't play harmony, we don't, you know, all those things that other instruments do or participate in, we don't do. In their minds, we just play rhythm. That's all. We just have this one little piece of the music that we're responsible for, while everybody else plays the real music, the expressive parts of music. That's the idea. Well, here's the thing. The one thing, I mean, even if you want to look at it that way, when it comes to just volume alone, every instrument can play loud or soft, just as they did that day with Lester Bowie. But none of them can play as loud or as soft as a drummer can. And none of them can change from loud to soft in such a radical way as fast as drummers do, right? I mean, you could, when you play a flam, right? The ghost note is very quiet, and the main note is quite loud by comparison. And those, you can play those things simultaneously if you want, or just separate them by a millisecond. And there's no other instrument that can do that, not to the degree we can. When it comes to changing the dynamic of what's being played, nobody can touch what we do. And that's one of the reasons why, if you're a drummer, you are always leading the band. Even if there's a singer who has got the spotlight on him, even if there's somebody in your band who's a composer and writing all the material, and even if there's somebody in the band with a very strong personality, which is often the case, none of them are leading the band. You are. And you are because you can change the volume, the intensity, the expressive aspects of music in a drummer's hands are almost like a lethal weapon. You can, with just the slightest change in your intention, you can get everyone's attention and drive the band or the musicians you're playing with, you can drive them in a whole new direction. And whether they are consciously aware of it or not, they're looking to you to do that. So these tools here, these tools of contrast, you can think of them as, they are the means by which we drive the bus, musically speaking. So volume is the obvious one, the easy one to see. Intensity is sort of its close cousin, because even though it's not necessarily related to volume, it's something that we can turn on and off instantaneously if we're aware of it and have it available to us as a tool. And these are things you can practice. You can, I was just practicing half an hour ago, and this is what I was working on, was just playing with levels of intensity, back and forth, and not just playing with them as practice a paradiddle, but practicing feeling different feelings and having those feelings direct the level of intensity. Right? I mean, if you're going to tell your spouse, "I love you," you don't want to do it like I did a little bit ago, demonstrating intensity. That doesn't really carry the message. You want, if you're going to tell your loved one that you love them, you want that to be, you want it to be very true, very genuine, but not necessarily intense. You want it to be gentle, sweet. You want the feeling that you're feeling toward them, I assume, is tenderness, affection, love. Those are gentle, sweet feelings. Intensity is not the tool you want there. You want less intensity to express those feelings. So that's what I was doing in practice, was just feeling, not necessarily love, but just letting different feelings flow through me, and then having my hands reflect those feelings in terms of intensity. And then that also, and when I was doing that, when I was just letting the feelings direct me, not only was it varying the intensity without ever intellectually thinking about it or directing my hands at all, it was also varying the volume and the speed and the pitch. And there are the four elements of expressiveness. And again, it wasn't like I was sitting there going, "All right, now I need to work on using speed to be expressive." No, that's not the idea at all. What you want to practice, and this idea applies for all the videos we're going to do together here. The thing you practice is feeling. Since music, back from the first video, we talked about how music is an expression of feeling. It communicates a feeling, an idea, a sensibility, a sense of being alive, being in love, being in pain, feeling yearning, feeling need, feeling excited, feeling happy, feeling sad, whatever it is. That's what music is. Music is an expression of those feelings using a language that is beyond words, which makes it universal so everyone else can feel what you're feeling and can share in that feeling. And sharing a feeling is the most powerful thing there is. So that's, in the first video, we talked about that's what music is. So when you're practicing, the thing you want to practice is just that. Feeling. What are my feelings? What are the range of feelings? And the place you want to get to with that is the place I was trying to get to this afternoon, which is to feel the feeling and have that feeling come out through your hands and your feet. With no, as I said in the first video, and we'll say through all of them, we do not play music with our hands and our feet. We play music with our ears and our heart. There is no music in your head. Let me say it again and again. There is no music in your head. If you are playing from your head, in your head, you're not playing music. You're playing something intellectual. You're doing an athletic exercise on the drums, right? Expressiveness is here, not here. So when you're practicing, that's the thing to practice, is to over time learn to be aware, is my playing coming from my head or my heart? And you want to get to a place where the head is not involved at all. I can't say not at all. You want your head involved insofar as you need to know where you are in a given, if there's an arrangement for a song and you need to know where you are in the arrangement, okay, your head has to be involved that much. But you want it to be only that. You don't want your head involved in the musical part, only in the structural, functional part. Everything musical comes from your heart, and your practice needs to be practicing how to feel, how to be aware when you're playing. Be aware of where your playing is coming from. Is it coming from your head or your heart? Are you thinking about your hands and your feet and the technique you have to use to play this thing? Then you're playing from your head. That's not music. That's calisthenics. You want to play from your heart and practice getting your heart to be the thing that drives everything you do. You want nothing between your feeling and your motion of your fingers and your hands and your feet. That there should be nothing between there. It's like your body doesn't even exist. It's just the feelings passing through your body and out to the audience, and that's all it is. That takes a lot of practice, because that is not how most of us live and not how we think, and that's it's just something that requires. I've been doing this for 67 years, something like that, and I still have to practice that, because it's still way too easy for me to thinking about what I'm playing. Way too easy for me to be playing from my head. Oh, wouldn't this be clever if I do this, right? That's death. No. What am I feeling? Let the feeling dictate what I play. And the feeling, you're not just feeling alone, of course, you're playing with other people. The feeling is everybody in the band, or whatever group you're performing with, whatever kind of music you're playing, everybody is being expressive, is feeling something. They are, music is flowing between you, among you, from you, collectively, individually, and you're listening to all that, responding to that, adding to that, flowing back and forth between you and them. And this is true even if you're playing a very set piece of music, an arrangement that's very tight, has all these hits you got to do and stops and all the rest of it. It still should be coming from your heart and not from just plain muscle memory. It should be coming from your heart. You have to stop here. Your heart may tell you to play a little something that leads into that stop and makes it more dramatic. But you're not going to think about what that is. You're not going to say, oh, I need, fill number 7 from the 10 fills you must know video. No, you're in the moment. You're in the music. You're feeling the music, and the music, you know this thing is coming, and your body feels it coming, and then you play something that leads into it, that amplifies it, that throws a spotlight on it. But what that is, you don't know. If you're doing this right, you have no idea what you're going to play next. If you're doing it right. You know where the stop is. You're not going to play through the stop, but you don't know what you're going to play leading into the stop. That's a surprise to you and to everybody else, if you're doing this right. Now, I know that sounds really weird and foreign and strange, but that's what we want to get to. So, that's dynamics, contrast, all of those things. And you can practice all of those things. You can practice playing with a song that you know and just responding to that song emotionally. You can practice that when you're playing with other people in a band or on a stage and practice whatever. You can practice this like I did, just in the abstract. Just let your mind go and just start feeling what your heart's doing. What is your heart telling you? What are your emotions, your feelings, your attitudes telling you? And just practice letting that out through your hands and your feet. That's the thing. Just one. Mostly I'm not going to do this sort of thing in these videos, but there's just one little nitpicky thing I want to bring up here because it's an illustration of this idea. Double bass drumming. I don't know how or why it got to be this way, but these days, anytime I hear somebody playing a double bass, they're all playing the exact same thing, which is as fast as they can. And It's the most boring. It's so damn boring. It doesn't have any feeling in it at all. It's just, hey, watch what I can do. You know, I can juggle a refrigerator and a spoon. It's not music. That's not music at all. That's an athletic exercise. And, you know, it's impressive. I'm impressed by the athleticism of the drummers who can do that. But it's not music. To me, what I don't hear, what I almost never hear, is anybody playing one bass drum or two bass drums with dynamics, expressively playing, different volumes of notes, different sort of spaces between the notes, all the things we've been talking about. I don't hear anybody doing that with their bass drum. And your bass drum is the most powerful thing you've got. And yet we all just treat it like, you know, I don't know, we kind of ignore it. I mean, we play the notes on it, but just think how different, how much more powerful, how much more expressive your playing would be if you played your bass drum with dynamics. And by dynamics, I mean all of these things, all these expressive elements. Expressiveness on your bass drum will carry more power and feeling to the audience than anything you can do with your hands. So there's something else to practice, is trying to be mindful of what you're doing with the bass drum. And just, again, you want it to be expressive. You want the feeling to come out through your leg. You're not playing with your head. You're not going dubba, 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 dubba. No, and you could play a very, very simple bass drum pattern. If you play it expressively with dynamics and intention, more or less intensity, and that sort of thing, the simplest pattern becomes hugely effective because a bass drum is just so big and low and powerful. The slightest change in a bass drum is going to just carry waves of effect. Dubba 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 doesn't carry any effect except for people who go, wow, listen to that big sound and how fast he's going. I'm sorry, it just bugs the hell out of me because there's so much potential there and we all tend to ignore it. And this, again, this is something I'm practicing because I don't do this as consistently as I want. And it's not easy because it's one more thing to be, one more, getting your feet to play independently of your hands playing anything is hard. Getting the expressiveness and levels of intensity to be different, dynamics different from note to note between your feet and your hands is really hard. But think about the potential that's out there if you do that. So let me just finish this episode by saying something that I want to say more often in here, which is that what we're doing here, expressiveness in music is not something you learn, it's something you unlearn. And that's what all these videos are about, is how can we unlearn what we think we know, the things we think are facts, and replace it with things, or not even necessarily replace with anything, but just get past the things we know and get down to the things we feel. And that's what all these videos are about. So I hope this was helpful to you. If it was, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and hit the little notification bell so I can let you know when more of these things come out. I'm trying to do these like once every week, every other week. And there will be a bunch of them covering a whole lot of different subjects. And if you find this helpful to you, and you think there might be other people who would also find it helpful, if you like the video, that will help other people find it. And if you forward it to somebody, to another drummer you know, or if you're in a drummers group on Facebook or anywhere else, share this out there, because I'm not doing this to make money. I don't care about that anymore. I'm doing this because I want to hear music be more expressive. I want to hear drumming be as exciting as drumming can be. And getting this old, having learned all this stuff, the only point that's left for me now is sharing whatever I know for whatever help it might be to you. So thank you so much for coming here. I just can't tell you how happy it makes me that you wanted to listen to all this and you sat through all that stuff. And I really do hope you got something out of it. Please leave a comment. Tell me if there's something that you don't understand or that I confused you about, or if you just completely disagree with what I'm saying. That's fine too. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what you think and what your experience is like. And by all means, you know, I only know what I know. If you have ideas about this whole sort of concept of playing expressively, tell me. If there's something I'm not thinking about, I want to think about it. So tell me about that too. All right? Thank you so much for coming, and I will see you next time. Thanks.